TheCreative.Not-Corporate.com proudly presents The Creative, Not Corporate Pop Culture and Media Podcast, chronicling the ongoing pop culture battle between the creative minds of music, movies, TV, and radio, and the corporate suits that control them. Now, please welcome your host, a digital media professional with over 25 years experience in all forms of traditional and digital media, not to mention managing two of the largest online radio podcast networks on earth. Here is the king of podcasts. Did anyone really think it was a huge surprise that Roseanne would come back after 22 years being off the air, 21 years being off the air, and not make its way back up to the top? Well, now, what is amazing about the reboot and revival of this show, which I have to say is something that normally would be beyond belief, but when you talk about a reboot, as opposed to just doing this over with a new cast, nothing like the original. And that's exactly what we saw with Roseanne. Even coming back over 20 years later with the same cast, the same set, the same feel, just because we're in a different time and now people are reacting to the way it is being a different time politically and culturally. I get that, but you know what? Middle America and Americana hasn't changed. What is amazing is the fact that this show doesn't lose its laughter. What it is just like a show we used to watch back in the 90s or even before that. All the classic sitcoms that Roseanne went up against and its predecessors. And to realize how well they were written, how well they were scripted, and that's what we need to get back to. Because the creativity of a Roseanne never went away. Okay? Everybody wants to put it out here because it's the Trump storyline that's a part of it. I want to go through the ratings of this show. Do you understand? In the first 5 seasons that Roseanne was on the air, immediately became number 2 television show in America. Okay, we didn't have cable as prominent as it is now. Network TV ran supreme. And Nielsen ratings meant a lot. When you look at what the Nielsen ratings did at that time and what they went up against, all right, Roseanne, if you didn't realize it, it was always a show that did extremely well. It was only towards the end that it kind of fell back on its end because they made an extreme change to the storyline. They might have done some things that they were starting to run out of things to do because that's what sitcoms do. That the show had a very long life at its point. You're talking about 1988 and a heyday of really great sitcoms at the time. Okay. And let me tell you the sitcoms that it beat. And then I'll tell you about the ones that were right up against it that it did beat. But the ones that were able to get ahead of Roseanne at one point or another during those first 5 seasons. You're talking about monster, giant, successful sitcoms. Cosby Show, Cheers, Seinfeld, and Home Improvement. The only other show that would be at one point higher than Roseanne out of any of those shows was 60 Minutes. I mean, look at the competition they had. It might not have been looked that way, but look at what you had in the same territory as Roseanne. Roseanne was always was a number 1 show. The show for its time, I couldn't even tell you how many millions of people used to watch this show, but when you're talking about a show that would pull in the first 5 seasons between 18 and a 24 rating, 23.8 or as low as an 18.3 in the 3rd season. You're talking about at least, I want to say 30 million viewers any given night. Now, that first year, yeah, it had some help. And look at that. You had Who's the Boss in Wonder Years leading off that show in its first year, Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock. Then they moved to the Wednesdays, which also made a difference because of how things changed. And, it dealt with that too. And what it comes down to is there's so much that can be said about how the show works and how good writing and good talent, you can't just think a show can come back and just not deliver it again. But now, will it have staying power is a different story. Will and Grace brought in 15 million viewers the first time around, but here's the problem too. Will and Grace's ratings have fallen to the wayside because they didn't stick to their normal script. Because of the environment that we're in right now, Will and Grace decided to also go ahead and go very hard into politicizing. But there's a way to do it where you don't have to go that route. You can still be funny. Somehow Roseanne was able to do it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'll look at what other shows were going along during this time, but let me tell you, when I look back at the ratings between all these different seasons that were together, let's start off 88-89 season, a brand new show, and you're talking about a show that was going up against, wow. First of all, it was the Cosby Show that beat them, and Cosby Show was already 5 years ahead of them when it comes to, being on the air. They've been around for so long, and they were number one for years. Then A Different World, the spinoff of Cosby, Cheers in its 7th season, Golden Girls in its 5th season, running on a Saturday night, by the way, just nailing it out of the park. And this was when sitcoms reigned supreme in the top 10. Then that year, you had 60 Minutes, Murder, She Wrote, Who's the Boss, and Empty Nest. Then the following year, you had Grace Under Fire, Brett Butler's TV show, which in the same vein, another feel like Roseanne show, went to the top 10. So you had TV shows that were getting made in the same vein as Roseanne, just with a different comedian. 91-92 season, you add Home Improvement, Tim Allen, who we see for a number of years did fine doing that show. Then eventually would come back doing Last Man Standing. And funny to see, there's a chance that Last Man Standing might actually get a return by the company, by the group that actually produced the show. There's a chance that Last Man Standing might actually make it back on TV and on Fox. So go figure that. Another middle America type family. So Home Improvement kind of had that same feel. You had Designing Women. You had Full House. And Major Dad. I mean, look at the shows that it was beating up. And you're talking about, they were just all, the program that they had at that time, it was beating up some pretty good competition. Oh, and you also had Coach, Greg T. Nelson. So it was beating up some pretty good names. And for a long time, sitcoms ran supreme in the top 10. And at that time, drama wasn't as prominent as it was. We didn't have all the extra cop shows like we had in the 70s and 80s. We didn't have a lot of the campiness in that time. 90s, it was a time where that early part, Roseanne reigned supreme. That's why you bring that show back. If you're only going to bring it back for this season, great. And it's, when you're going to bring back the exact cast, that's one thing. But you go ahead and stick to what works, what people like to watch. You brought it back the way it was as well, okay? You have furthered the storyline. You took them away without the money. You took them away without all the other things. And the characters have gotten older, and they're playing it as such. So it's the characters that a lot of people loved, and now you bring them back, and it's just like old times. It's nostalgia that works. That's what it actually works. I mean, in this environment, it's not like it's an action movie where you need to have somebody come back and play Rambo or you need a Terminator to come back once again or Harrison Ford to come back as Indiana Jones. Reboots only work if you are bringing the original group back and it makes sense on how you bring them back. It's not that you're going back in a time machine. And if it was really good and it was successful, or if you spin off a show because of how it was done, that's fine too. But every time I hear a reboot that's going to be done and you're going to bring these reboots back, listen, how many times do we have to talk about Greatest American Hero going to be an Indian woman? They're going to bring back Cagney and Lacey and reboot that with somebody else. Or they're going to bring back Magnum P.I. and they're going to bring a woman Higgins and 3 other guys and think they could just take the characters and bring them back again. Now, some shows are so powerful that they can try to make it work and somehow it does. Listen, CBS has the magic to do that. They did it with MacGyver and Hawaii Five-0. It's amazing how they did it. Or you take a star and you have them start a new vehicle, and they've done that many times before too. So the creativity of doing things with characters and talent that works is one thing. So this is why this show does so well. But when you go against what brought you here, what made it successful in the first place, is what's most important. Because if you don't do that, the show is liable to fail. And then all the money you put into the marketing and the promotion to bring this show back, people miss that show, apparently. And people want that kind of comedy again. And that is what, in creatively, what needs to be understood is that the corporate types need to understand, yes, you can go back and do things like you used to, and you can try to put a little spin to it, but you have to know there are still certain things that are still funny, that are still entertaining to all of us, that are ageless, that are timeless. This is why Roseanne did so well. It has more to do with that because I don't know how many shows necessarily. The late night shows, the shows that deal with current events, that's one thing. So those shows are all going to significantly change because of the politicization of America. But you have shows that have a certain spin that feels old school that are on Netflix or Hulu or somewhere else, and they find their way. Or they're period pieces. They find their way and they find their success. So everybody back off of that, please. We're just happy to see another show come back. And hopefully what this needs to do is spawn the networks to get back to the drawing board and start seeing that if they need to start doing more blue-collar comedies, there were a lot of those back in the day. I think about it right now. You have King of Queens, which was not a show I necessarily watched, but people liked. Mike and Molly was pretty much like that. And, all the things that went on with that show went with how they did. But they were also like big city comedies. But then you could do things where you could, it's always a thing where the networks always felt like that. This is like how it was in the late 60s. And CBS had all that Southern type comedy. And they said, okay, enough. We're going to go metropolitan. We want to make urban comedies. Urban scale, like big city type things. We want to get away from this Southern drawl kind of thing. We don't want to go after the middle America crowd. That we could do something like we normally do, and that will catch on to people. Well, maybe that's what the networks need to do to get their audiences back, is that they need to go ahead and think old school and start thinking more middle America, more relatable content. Because the people that are watching on streaming more or less are those on the coasts. There are more people that are much more technologically, they can get to a store, drop into a car and just go somewhere. Your major cities. But your small town folk, it's a different story. I remember that when I lived in a small town, I didn't have a Best Buy or a mall to go to, or Walmart for that matter. So when you think about what you had that you were accessible to in a small town as opposed to big town. Well, there's a lot of small towns out there and a lot of millions of people that are out there that are, working factories, working farms, working hard, blue collar. Everything else has been tailored for the white collar crowd and for blue collar viewers to appreciate. Well, maybe it's time to start looking more blue collar again, because those kind of shows do stand out. I mean, I think about it. When it comes to, you could do comedies that are real popular, that are, where you have them set in major metropolitan cities like you did before. But the thing is, you think about it. It's like, I'm right now been binge watching, for whatever reason, I've been watching Barney Miller, Blue Collar Cops, 12th Precinct, Greenwich Village, New York City. But you just had this whole hodgepodge of people coming in. And that was just people you could relate to. In some cases, you could laugh at. And then begat Night Court, because Ryan Hall-Weech, who was part of the writers group for Barney Miller towards the end, got to be on Night Court and create that series. And then I think of Taxi. I mean, think about those shows right there. They were just, it was where it was. Happy Days. That was middle America. It was Americana. It was Milwaukee. Think about it. Those type of shows just resonated. Maybe there's something where you could create a new type of Americana, a new type of, and then remember all the shows that we had that were like the Waltons or Our House or Little House on the Prairie or what have you. The family-friendly kind of stuff. I guess maybe some of those shows can come back. You could create a new spin to it. You don't have to go back and reinvent. You can reinvent the wheel, maybe. You can at least try. Because going all suburbia and going all major city and going for trying to create diversity or anything else, that's not reality to everybody else in some cases. It's the big cities that see this kind of thing. White collar, people that are affluent, upper middle class. Well, there's a middle class that's being neglected for a long time. And television should consider getting back to that crowd, because we want to see that too. I think everybody as a whole wants to see a different landscape, a different setting, a different accent, maybe a different feel. Maybe there's something to be said about all these British programs that come across, and all of a sudden we see them here, and wow, right? There are all these English shows, but we don't care about the accent. We don't care about anything that goes on with it. We just enjoy the programming. And there's just things that are unique and different on all the shows that are streaming that make us want to watch. So everybody's been stuck in a rut in Hollywood. It's time to start looking outside of that. And that's what I hope for all of you to do. If you are out there in the business, that you'll start considering that, and let Roseanne be an example of a direction that maybe we should see more of. Not because of politics. Don't take it that it's about that, because it's not. And if you think that way, you're wrong. It's not what I'm about here. I am still sticking to my guns about the gimmick. The reason, the format of this show is that you need to find where there's room for creativity to create great programming, great projects, whether it's radio, TV, music, or movies. You need to keep their eye on the ball. And there are those programmers out there that learn this and they figure out, oh, this would be an interesting story to talk about. And that's why we do this. And there are some shows that are coming back that just find something interesting and intriguing to watch at we just can't stop watching, that we binge in just the right amount. I mean, all the shows that I watch, that's what it is for me. Hap and Leonard is now on, and I enjoy that show. It has a feel of Justified. Justified had that blue collar kind of feel to it. And Hap and Leonard is like that, and also has that hokey jokey laughing kind of thing to it. But it's a dramedy. Fargo, we have a fascination for that in the same way, and it does really well. And then sometimes something creative is something that we've learned from history or we listen to, where the American Crime Story has done so well. When it comes to the Gianni Versace murder or the O.J. Simpson trial, Like, all of that is exciting. Homeland, it's like everyday life brought into life, and we see real things going on. And just this year is all about domestic terrorism, and it's just what a story. Billions is coming back now, and I just got back into that. It's a great start, and, you know, we like our antagonists. And how many good antagonists are out there that make us really say, wow, what an asshole. Bobby Axelrod is a jerk. And, you know, we used to like how Dallas used to make us feel, and how J.R. Ewing used to get under our skin. It was good. We need the things that make us feel excited about television again, to get us excited to watch again. Movies do that to us so well, but TV needs to find that. I mean, you can find some of that now on television, especially in the streaming channels, but to find that on network TV, it's pretty tough. Because it does. It's not, maybe people are afraid to do something like that where they can keep somebody so interested for so long, but those kind of things need to happen again. Now, I was going to go ahead and re-air, or I was going to go and air for the first time the composer Robert Miller interview, but I'm going to hold that out for next week because I wanted to talk about what was going on here. So I held back on that. I just thought it was something I wanted to go and do. Because the Roseanne thing was such a great focal point. That's why I decided not to do that. I'll just go ahead and talk about this for a bit and move on to some other things. But either which way, I've talked about Roseanne. I'm just saying to myself, listen, here's how well it did compared to the rest of the world of TV. Aired back-to-back episodes from 8 to 9 o'clock this past Tuesday. 5.1 rating in adults 18 to 49. And it drew 18.2 million viewers for the hour. When Will and Grace came back at the beginning of the season, it drew a 3.0 rating and 10 million viewers, but it got to 15 with the on-demand audience. Young Sheldon this year, which has been the runaway hit before Roseanne, drew 3.8 and 17.2 million in its debut. So the Connors family return after 20 years drew plenty of nostalgia viewers, and others were surely motivated to watch to see how Roseanne Barr supported President Trump would play out on screen. The only other show that outperformed Roseanne was the show after the Super Bowl, This Is Us, which got a 9.3 and 27 million viewers, which you're not going to get that during a normal broadcast week. And to think of the other shows that you have out there that are trying to compete with it, nothing else could. And then here's the other thing, too, that Roseanne helped Blackish, which normally doesn't pull over a 2 rating for 18 to 49. It got a 2.6, almost 9 million viewers watching. And then they debuted a brand new show called Splitting Up Together, and it opened with a 2.2 and 7.2 million viewers. Those are huge numbers. Huge numbers for sitcoms. Those shows normally would not be able to break a 1. And Roseanne did what it was supposed to do. It brought in the audience to start off the night, and it carried it all the way through. And ABC won the night in the demo. They did finish second in total viewers because they also had to go up against Bull and NCIS the same night. Like, they were up against some of the top competition. NCIS for a number of years has been number 1. They pulled 11.8 million on their show, and the new NCIS New Orleans also was on the same night, and Bull was the same night. So think about that. Incredible. So let the TV community learn something out of what happened. One more thing I wanted to make mention about TV was The Americans making its way back. One of my favorite shows, and I know people have always critically acclaimed this show. It was a very unique show. And now we know how we always talk about FX doing such a good job with this show, and it has. And we're here. The 6th and final season has started. Matthew Rice and Kerry Russell excellent together. I mean, the show has just been so good. And, I mean, the showrunners were always thinking about, what do we do? Do we make it more sexy? Do we put more action sequences into it? Do we lay back a bit on the sadness that underlies the story? And then they decided on anything we could do that would make it broader and make it less specifically what made it great. Essentially, they could not reconcile, according to John Landgraf, with making it better, but making it broader. So we decided, instead of trying to make it broader, to actually lean harder into what made it great, even though that would probably narrow its appeal. And according to John Landgraf, he said that FX has found the most success by investing in the decade and not the year or the quarter. Interesting. Weisberg and Fields took John Landgraf's advice, running with it, and they said that John Landgraf was never about forcing a particular kind of result, but instead about helping the people who were making the show, all of them, as individuals and as a team, find the best version of the show they want to make. The incredible sense of empowerment that comes with that support, making you do the very best work. Well, and that's why FX has done so well. There's a lot of shows I'm sure they really would do great, but I haven't had a chance to catch, shows like Atlanta or Baskets or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or things like that. Just haven't had a chance to get to that. So, but anyway, Americans coming back. It's about time for it to run its course. I just wonder if Philip and Elizabeth are going to be able to survive, or they're going to get caught by, their buddy in the FBI, or what will happen. So that'll be cool. And by the way, when I look at the TV pilots coming up now, they're not going to be able to do anything about trying to bring some down-home, blue-collar comedies in, but they're not helping themselves at all when they're trying to create new shows. And I look at some of the shows that are getting picked up right now from the networks, and you tell me if they sound any good. Okay. There's a project that follows a stuck-in-his-ways, opinionated, fading TV star moving in with his progressive daughter, her girlfriend, and the child they're raising together. Okay. They have a show called Take Two with Rachel Bilson, who was on a show. What was the one she was on? CW, and I forgot what it was called. Didn't do much after leaving the OC. But, she's done a little bit here and there. So, she plays Ella, the former star of a hit cop series, fresh out of rehab following a bender of epic proportion. You have a show called The Rookie. And this says it's starting over isn't easy, especially for small-town guy John Nolan, played by Nathan Fillion, who we know as Castle, who after a life-altering incident is pursuing his dream of being an LAPD police officer. So Castle was a private investigator. Now we're going to make the spin to try to make him a cop. Okay? I'm not going to go through all these. Then you have one that's called, there's another project from Tim Doyle. That's what it's the working name. Set in the 70s, an ensemble comedy following a traditional Irish Catholic family as they navigate changes big and small during one of America's most turbulent decades. Then they have a show that is the Greatest American Hero. Then we have a show called Man of the House. Multi-single camera hybrid family comedy centers on two recently divorced, very different sisters who, against their better judgment, move in together to raise their collective kids, 2 girls and 1 boy, under one roof in the suburbs of Miami. I think they call that Kate and Allie, right? Another show back in the 90s. This is what ABC is working on. Things like that. CBS, they're bringing back Murphy Brown. Then they have a show called Whiskey Cavalier, a high-octane, hour-long action dramedy that follows the adventures of tough but tender FBI super agent Will Chase, codenamed Whiskey Cavalier, who, following an emotional breakup, is assigned to work with badass CIA operative Francesca Frankie Trowbridge, Codename Fiery Tribune. Well, that just sounds bad. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll get told and here we go. A show called Blood and Treasure, serialized action-adventure series centering on a brilliant antiquities expert and cunning art thief who team up to catch a ruthless terrorist who funds his attacks through stolen treasure. That just sounds convoluted. FBI, we had a show called The FBI back in the 70s. They're going to have one here about the inner workings of the New York office of the FBI. Okay. Oh, here's something current. How about History of Them, a hybrid multi-camera, multicultural ensemble about how two friends, Luna and Adam, meet and fall in love using the couple's social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as a guide. It just got picked up for a pilot. So we see what ABC's doing. What is CBS doing as well? I'm Mom So Hard. Oh, boy. Multi-camera comedy follows two moms who show how their friendship gets them through being wives and mothers. Pandas in New York, a family of Indian doctors with a successful group practice, embark on a project to arrange their youngest son's life, unaware he's made plans of his own. I'm surprised how many shows actually make it through. The Cagney and Lacey reboots coming out soon for them. God Friended Me, questions of faith, existence, and science, explored in this humorous, uplifting series about an outspoken atheist whose life is turned upside down when he... Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, boy. What else we got? Murder, fresh take on the investigative drama, explores crime through the unique and often conflicting perspectives of cops and killers, witnesses and victims, friends and family. Okay, Red Line. After a white cop in Chicago mistakenly shoots and kills a black doctor, we follow three different families that have all connections with the case as the story is told from each perspective. We're just trying to stoke flames. Huh? That sounds like a great idea. CW, I'm just not looking. Listen, they got two shows or pilots that are with the word dead in it. One show called The End of the World as We Know It. Oh, boy. That's one of the things they have. And then Fox has Dan the Weatherman. After getting fired from his cushy job as a weatherman at a local TV station, Dan finds it's tough. That's not enough to be a charming white man in this world and reluctantly ends up at the neighboring Spanish TV station. Oh, man. We're going to just go progressive, I guess, and then we're just... Do people want to see that? Do people... I mean, is it just to stir things up? I mean, can we find that funny? I want to find out how they're going to make it funny. That's what I'm trying to figure out. A show called Rel, a prideful, self-made success who lives by the code to always believe in yourself and great things will come, and finds the attitude put to the test when he learns his wife is having an affair with his own barber. Oh, man, let me tell you. Shoo. Pilot season sounds bad. I don't see them doing anything that's going to make things better for themselves. There's some really, really bad pilots coming out. And these are going to be shows we're going to be seeing in the fall lineup. That's if you're actually going to watch the fall lineup. But now they're just going to the extreme with a lot of their ideas, which doesn't make sense. Right? Mixtape, this is from Fox, a romantic musical drama that looks at a disparate group of interconnected people in contemporary Los Angeles through the lens of the music that defines who they are. Lil Kev, that's a Kevin Hart-based animated series. That'll probably do quite well. You go figure. Amy Poehler, Mike Scully and Julie Thacker Scully with a pilot on a half-hour animated comedy centered around the family and friends of 15-year-old Duncan Harris, an average kid with dreams of being a UFC fighter, tech billionaire, video game champ, or any job you can make a ton of money and don't have to wear a tie. You have a show called Abby's, an unlicensed bar in San Diego where the regulars enthusiastically enforce a unique set of rules that give them a sense of community and allow them to avoid the frustrating behavior found at other establishments. These are the creative things that the writers in Hollywood are coming up with. This is what we're coming up with now. These are the shows we're getting on network TV. No wonder digital streaming is kicking their ass left and right. Friends-in-law, Brian and Jake, are polar opposites who quickly must figure out how to coexist when their respective best friends decide to get married. Isn't that How I Met Your Mother? Wasn't that basically the same thing? So close at Rhodes in their separate lives, hopeless romantics Riley and Kyle are close to settling for the wrong partner. Unaware that they live only blocks apart and they may be each other's soulmates. Are Riley and Kyle two guys or a guy and a girl? I don't know. Then NBC has the spinoff of Bad Boys, which Gabrielle Union is the free-spirited former DEA agent. She's an LAPD detective. So it has nothing to do with Bad Boys. Oh, boy. In between lives, a mysterious young woman reluctantly uses her gift of clairvoyance to help a veteran LAPD detective and a damaged ex-FBI outsider solve the most unnerving and challenging cases the city encounters. Isn't that Touched by an Angel? More or less. Suspicion, a Hitchcockian, they said this here, a Hitchcockian thriller about how far one man will go to save the people he loves. Sounds like Taken. I don't know. And there's a show called The Village. Despite difference in age, race, culture, and lifestyle, the residents of a Manhattan apartment building find that the more their lives intertwine, the more complex and compelling their connections become, thus proving life challenges are better fated alongside family, even if it's the one wherever you find it. It's like network TV has given up. This is the same bubble of people coming up with ideas, shopping these shows around. Do any of these shows sound like they would just kick the pants out of anything like a House of Cards or Walking Dead or Americans or Homeland or Billions or Game of Thrones? Does any of these shows feel like that? Do any of them feel like that? I can't look at this no more. But these are the pilots. This is the world of TV that we have. I'm getting out of TV. I'm just tired of it. I can't talk about it anymore. This weekend, Ready Player One opens. Box office time. Let's go into what actually has been going on in the box office that we haven't talked about this past weekend. No movies I went to see this weekend. Did not bother doing that. Now, there were screenings of Ready Player One. It already got $4 million to start off the top. And as for this past weekend, Black Panther was toppled by Pacific Rim Uprising, which made $28 million out of a budget of $150 million. So it's going to take some time to get there. Black Panther, second place, $17 million. I Can Only Imagine, $13 million. Off a budget of $7 million. This faith-based drama has already made $38 million. Wow. Sherlock Gnomes came out and made $10 million off a budget of $59 million. Will it make enough? Tomb Raider, $10 million to get the $41 million total gross off a $94 million budget. That might not make it. It might bomb. I hate to say it. It could happen, but you know, what are you going to do? A Wrinkle in Time, $8 million for sixth place, $74 million total. So it's going to probably sneak past to make its $100 million budget. Love, Simon, $7 million to be seventh place, $23 million total gross, and $17 million budget. Paul Apostle of Christ is eighth. Game Night is ninth, making $60 million off a budget of $37 million. That means it's a hit. Midnight Sun, $4 million in its first week. So Ready Player One They're hoping to make $42 million this weekend. So they expect to be the new movie that's going to take over everybody. And this is Easter weekend. So there'll be other movies they're going to have to go up against. Currently, Rotten Tomatoes has it as an 82% fresh rating. It's going to be in over 4,000 movie theaters. So they're baking everything on it. Hoping for something big for this weekend. Based on a 2011 novel, an elaborate virtual reality world full of pop culture totems from the 80s. So think Stranger Things, but in this kind of sense of virtual reality into it. That's the whole idea, I guess. That might be okay. I'm going to go see it. I'm looking forward to it. Coming up this weekend is God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness, Tyler Perry's Acrimony. That looks really good, too. Taraji P. Henson in that. That looks interesting. It's going to be in 2,000 theaters. So that's what I have for this weekend to watch. And then next weekend looks good. That'll be a couple of movies to watch. I know that I'll watch Chappaquiddick coming out April 6th. That's what I'm looking for next. And there's some other movies that are coming out. Well, there's The Miracle Season, A Quiet Place, Emily Blunt, and the guy from The Office. I can't say his name. And I've seen a lot of promos for that. So they're hoping a lot of money for that horror movie. And Blockers with John Cena and Leslie Mann and a bunch of other people. That's also coming out April 6th. That's coming up pretty soon. And that's your movies. Moving along to music and radio. So, did you know Snoop Dogg, after he got done with reggae, he decided to go into gospel? Yeah, gospel music. He puts out his first ever gospel album. It becomes #1 on the gospel chart, the Billboard. Snoop Dogg presents Bible of Love. It's a new faith-based set. It sold 5,000 album units during the week ending March 22nd. 32 tracks on it. And it has a lot of featured gospel artists. Some of the biggest names in gospel music: Erica Campbell, Marvin Sapp, Ty Tribbett, and Charlie Wilson. Trust me, they're a big deal. Charlie Wilson's different. He does a lot of the things where he's also an R&B artist, but also dabbles in gospel as well. Like gospel is actually quite a venture. You know, it's not a major format in radio, but there are a lot of people that listen to it. It's much like R&B. It really does have its core following, and a lot of major artists coming off of that. Plus, it is a place for R&B artists and rap artists to cross over. Why I heard Nicki Minaj on an album from that just sounds wrong. And hearing Snoop Dogg, after all he's been through, doing an album like this is also, really? Wow. Just looks interesting. Now, as for Snoop Dogg, it's his 25th entry onto the Billboard 200 album chart. He even had it for a reggae album called Reggae Albums 2013's reincarnated under the building Snoop Lion. That amazing. How about the Billboard Hot 100 this week? Again, for the 9th week at the very top of the chart, it's God's Plan and Drake. Top 10 goes like this. Brand new song. First of all, Pray For Me, The Weeknd of Kendrick Lamar, started at number 10. Number 9 is Little Dicky and Chris Brown with a brand new song called Freaky Friday. Camila Cabello, Havana is 8. Extentacion song Sad from a new album is 7. Going up 12 notches from number 19. The middle, Zed, Mary Morrison, Gray, stays at number 6. Psycho, Post Malone, and Ty Dolla $ign, number 5. Finesse, Bruno Mars, and Cardi B, number 4. Perfect, Ed Sheeran, at number 3. Meant to Be, BB Rex and Florida Georgia Line, they make it from number 4 to number 2. But there is no way they're going to outmatch the artist that still continues to get 40+ million streams on Spotify to date. Like, there's just no way to beat it. And that's where he's at. So, huge. One last I want to get to tonight, and that's somebody being truly hating iHeartRadio.
a station owner, new radio station owner. I thought this was fascinating. This is from the San Diego Reader, Ken Layton. And I want to read this story to you where he tells you everything that's going on and how radio station owners that are at least trying to do the right thing are screwed by all the things that are going on with iHeartRadio and their $20 million in debt. Mark Paskin, a former radio station owner, says, quote, I believe they helped ruin the radio industry. iHeartRadio, as you know, is a radio group that owns billboards, promotes concerts, owns 850 stations nationwide, including 7 in San Diego. As you know, iHeart went bankrupt. Not a surprise to many of the 100-plus local employees who worked at the 7 iHeart radio stations. We'll name some of the stations, but there are a lot of major stations in this cluster. Quote, they told us in a video conference call not to worry that none of us would lose our jobs. But of course, they're not going to tell us that that those of us they think they are not essential, that we won't be here in 30 to 60 days. The Chapter 11 filing was due to a debt of over $20 billion that the San Antonio-based company had carried for almost 10 years. They let them go for 10 years with this. Paskin was a top 40 DJ in radio's golden years in the 60s and 70s before he built a sizable residential real estate portfolio. He says he would love to acquire one of the iHeart stations if America's largest radio group ends up spinning off some local assets. He bought an FM station in Denver 3 years ago called Smoking 94.1. It was basically a classic rock station with a cannabis gimmick. He came on the air as DJ Gary Ganja, wore a dreadlock wig when TV cameras came by. Most of the Denver TV stations did a piece on us, even the New York Times. Hey, creative. Why not do it in Denver? They did it. Local owner. See what I'm saying? Hey, it might not be an idea of a format you would go for, but this guy decided to do it because he could. And he was having fun with it. Now, Paskin says it may be a good time to retake some local radio real estate if a bankruptcy judge tells iHeart to divest. Properties of radio stations have really gone down. The Loop, WLUP, just sold for $21 million. 10 years ago, it was worth $250 million, a drop of 90%. Paskin says he would be interested in a local station if it was available for $5 million or so. If he were to retake the airwaves, he says he may launch a 60s oldie station. No one else locally is playing the Beatles, Stones, and Beach Boys. I'd like to bring back fun and local personality. Paskin says he has hope for a 60s radio station that may use retro top 40 DJs like Shotgun Tom Kelly. What he missed, the oldies but goodies may not make him rich. But as a businessman, of course, I would like it to make money, he says. But if I did this, it would be more of a labor of love. He's certain he couldn't do any worse than iHeart. The reason music stations are doing so poorly right now is partly because of technology, Pandora and Spotify, especially with younger people. They're building some cars now without a radio. You get a computer screen with 500 options. But another part of the reason radio sucks so bad now is because of iHeart. Amen, Mr. Paskin. He says iHeart is famous for replacing live DJs with automated voice tracks. Quote, they took the creativity out of radio. They're all a bunch of zombies, but people still want to hear local DJs, end quote. Paskin, who was known for posting a billboard looking for a Latina girlfriend, doesn't hold back his feelings. In Denver, I would stand on the corner in his gimmick with a sign that says, honk if you ate iHeartRadio. I get honks and high fives for hours. The fact is, and this is his quoting, iHeart is a shitty company and it's good if they just go away. And that is the way I'm going to leave this show tonight. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's program, the Creative Not Corporate Pop Culture Media Podcast. I haven't said anything about any advertising, but I would love for all of you to please make it a point to go to creativenotcorporate.com and click on the sponsors page. Please support our sponsors to help make this show possible. Please share this show by telling people to go to creativenotcorporate.com and tell them that they can subscribe to the show many different ways. iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you can find us. We hope you do. And we hope, don't do what the network TV types are doing right now. Don't do crappy pilots. Make your projects creative and different and bend the rules and cross that line and be creative and keep corporate away from your creative as much as you can. Thanks for listening. I'm out.
Thank you for listening to the Creative, Not Corporate Pop Culture and Media Podcast. To learn where to subscribe to the show and how to follow the King of Podcasts anywhere on social media, go to our website at creativenotcorporate.com. That's creativenotcorporate.com. The Creative Not Corporate Podcast is brought to you by Amazon. Shop where the King of Podcasts shops for everything and anything he needs by going to kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. Also, check out the King of Podcasts' work every day at webmasterradio.fm and cannabisradio.com. And look for his other original podcast series, The Wrestling is Real Podcast. Learn about these and more at kingofpodcasts.com.